Hi, hello, salutations, and welcome. I'm Greg Jones, and this is the Soft Roots Lounge, where we dig beneath the surface. I'm really glad that you're here. This is a place to slow down for a few minutes, a place you can come to when the day has been full or heavy or just loud. There's nothing you need to do while you're here. Think of this as a strategic pause, intentional. You can just listen. And I appreciate you spending this moment with me. This place is where we slow down, as I said, where we talk about real things without rushing to fix them or dress them up. And I welcome the conversation. Lately, I've been thinking about cycles. And before I go any further, I want to be clear about what I mean by the word cycle. We know what they are, we experience them every day. You're doing one right now. When I say cycle, I'm not talking about something inherently good or bad. I'm talking about structure. Cycles are the patterns we live inside. They're how things tend to unfold over time. Some cycles are obvious: waking up, going to work, coming home. But what actually makes something a cycle isn't always the action itself, it's the expected outcome. You wake up and move through your morning routine. The expectation is that you'll be clean, ready, and prepared for the day. You go to work expecting to be there for a set amount of time, doing familiar tasks, moving through a predictable rhythm. Over time, these expectations become automatic. And here's an important distinction because I know what you're thinking. Well, Greg, that sounds like a routine. Well, it is. A routine is what you do, a cycle is what it leads to and what you come to expect. Think about that. A routine is what you do, and a cycle is what it leads to create an expected outcome. You can change routines without ever changing the cycle. You can adjust habits, schedules, even behaviors, and still find yourself arriving at the same emotional outcome. Because cycles aren't just built from actions, they're shaped by recurring patterns and expectations. Some of those influences are external: people, environments, systems, roles, whatever. Some are internal: beliefs, assumptions, stories we tell ourselves. Most of the time, it's a combination of both. And cycles aren't a problem by default. Most of them form because they help us function. They create predictability. They give us a rhythm and a flow, something that we can look forward to. They help us move through life without having to think about everything all the time. We're not trying to eliminate all struggle because life is always going to ask something of us, usually when we don't expect it. But over time, some cycles stop giving back in the way they once did. And that's the point of this conversation. That doesn't mean they were wrong, doesn't mean they were a mistake. It just means something has shifted. In that liminal space right there, that crossroads of feeling like something is wrong, it's easy to put that label on there. But what I found in my experience, it's not necessarily that it's wrong, it's just wrong for me now. Something in me has shifted, something in you has shifted. That might be your body, your psyche, whatever you want to call it, telling you that you've outgrown something or something is no longer serving you with positive results anymore. It's not impacting you the same way. Now, what I've been noticing is that cycles tend to repeat the same outcomes, not just in what happens, but in how things end. The same internal conversations, the same waiting, the same emotion result, no matter how much effort goes in. And that's often when grief shows up. Grief for what the cycle meant, for the hope that lived inside it. And at the same time, there can be relief. Relief that something has been named and identified. Relief that there might be room for something else to take shape. Both can exist simultaneously. And that can create a little bit of conflict, I know. Hope can keep a cycle going longer than it needs to. Sometimes when, let's say, you're dealing with somebody and they just ain't doing it for you anymore. They're just doing things that takes more from you than you're getting. And we have a history with this person. We know this person. And we think of, well, if I just endure, if I just be patient, perhaps this outcome will change in my favor. The belief that if we stay patient, we keep working through it, eventually it will turn around. That's comfort in that belief. There's also fear tied to it. So why do we stay in these cycles? Even if we maybe subconsciously know that it's no good for us, why do we stay? Fear. And this can be internal. Fear of the unknown, fear of loss, fear that letting go means the time and energy spent that you invested in this work, people, relationships, whatever. The fear that that time and energy didn't matter, even when we know it served a purpose once. Cycles tend to continue until something changes. Sometimes that change is intentional, sometimes it's forced, but sometimes it begins quietly with recognition. One way I've started noticing a cycle is by paying attention to what feels repeatable, not just what happens, but what it leads to. Remember, I said the outcome, right? The feeling at the end, the part of you that's already bracing or waiting or preparing for what usually comes next. Sometimes the most important step is simply seeing the structure you're standing in. Once I started seeing cycles more clearly, I realized honesty mattered more than anything else. Not honesty with other people, honesty with myself. You got to ask whether you actually want it to make changes within a cycle or whether the cycle itself no longer fits. Sometimes there's room to adjust the structure, sometimes there isn't. And that isn't always obvious at first. So I'm talking a lot about cycles that no longer work for us and cycles that no longer serve us, but that fear of not knowing what's next. So, how do we release ourselves from these cycles that no longer serve us? Well, creating a new cycle can feel overwhelming because we tend to think of change as something that has to happen all at once. One of my biggest flaws is that when I identify something that needs to be fixed, I need it fixed right now. My patience does not serve me very well in those moments because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And now you know that expectation is not going to help you. And you feel stuck, trapped, overwhelmed, anxious, any adjective that fits there for you. Cycles don't form overnight, they grow over time. It's like planting a seed and watering it day after day after day. And then one day it's 10 feet tall. You're like, I don't remember when you got this big. They settle in, they shape themselves around who we are and what we tolerate. Think about work as an example, right? You get the job, and at first there's excitement. Yay, I'm going to work. New adventure. I'm going to make money. You're eager to show up. You're meeting new people. You're learning that environment, making yourself comfortable, finding your place. And maybe that job isn't perfect. It's not your dream job, but it's manageable. You're getting paid. Okay. There's potential. Then, after a while, over time, things start to change or rather settle in. You notice what doesn't align. Expectations change, boundaries blur. The boss that you had who was so pleasant during the interview, now you start to see that they're not really all that. Some of your coworkers might be problematic. Some of your tasks might feel repetitive in a way where it doesn't feel like it matters. You're not getting the recognition for the work that you're doing that you feel you deserve. And then you start to look around and think, damn, what am I doing here? Why am I spending all my time and effort here when I don't even really like it no more? And you try to convince yourself, well, I'm making money and it's close to home, it's this and that. But those thoughts still lead back to, man, I hate this place, bro. Maybe you're asked to give more than you were hired for. Maybe time off isn't really time off. We know we know what that feels like. You get the weekend and all of a sudden you blink twice, it's Monday. Eventually, the pattern becomes familiar. Before the day even starts, your mind is already preparing for that outcome. You're bracing yourself. You're anticipating frustration before anything has actually happened. And that's not because you're negative. It's because history has taught you what to expect, and you're preparing yourself to endure that impact because you know it's going to be uncomfortable. And that's usually the crossroads, right? The moment where you realize you can either stay inside that cycle as it is or begin thinking about how to leave it. And the hardest part is that when you're standing there, you don't yet know where you'll land. And I don't know about you, but for me, that's what keeps me in cycles that no longer serve a purpose. That uncertainty keeps a lot of people stuck. What I've learned is that the focus doesn't need to be on the landing, not all the time. It needs to be on clarity, being honest about what you want, being honest about what you don't want anymore. What are your goals? Your actual goals, not just what you've been enduring toward. And then slowly, strategically, asking how you might move in that direction. That's a key word there, strategically. When we're dealing with these cycles, emotions are going to be present. When something makes us uncomfortable and we dislike it and it hurts us, we get angry, we get sad, and we make decisions because we don't want to feel that anymore. And sometimes what holds us back, I mentioned the fear of the unknown. Well, how many times have you thought about this? Well, I'm going to stay here because what if it's worse over there? What if I make a mistake? What if I end up in the same cycle over and over again? And that's a legitimate fear. I understand that. But strategically, when we look at that, we're forming something new. That is where we start making a new cycle by identifying what works for us and what works against us. We have to be comfortable in the uncomfortable, to use a cliche. I think that's a cliche. I have to look that up. That's how the exit starts to take shape. The hope and faith you once placed in the cycle itself can be redirected, not toward a situation changing, but toward your confidence that you can handle whatever comes next. Once you identify what's no longer working for you, you're on the course. You don't have to rush changes. You're preparing for them. There's levity in that realization. And that matters. Preparing for what's next is hard. It's not supposed to be easy. If anyone tells you that it's easy, they've either gone so far that they can't remember how hard it was, or they lying to you. You have to really look at yourself and say, what am I doing this for? Who am I performing for? Who am I trying to impress? Why do I feel so trapped here? That's the first step. I'm still doing that myself. And it's hard. But the next steps usually come with clarity. It's going to require difficult decisions. It may require you to separate from some people. It may require you from thinking about taking a different job, something that's completely out of your wheelhouse, so to speak, something new. Evaluate who you are right now. You're not the same person you were yesterday. You're not going to be the same person tomorrow. It might be familiar. Close your eyes and think about a time when you were stuck in a cycle. If you're driving, don't close your eyes. That's very dangerous. Close your eyes and think about a cycle that you were in. Maybe you were dealing with a person who always ended up doing the same things. Maybe it's a job, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's something that you thought you needed. Think about how you felt at the end of those outcomes. What did you say to yourself? What did you do? Think about where you are now and think about that and just compare. Are you that same person? Do you want to still be that person? Or do you think there's something else for you? Again, you don't have to rush for changes. Just prepare for it. And that preparation matters. Well, that's my thoughts for this topic for today. And I really appreciate you being here. I want you to think about what it is that you want. I want you to try to identify patterns. That's the first step. Can you identify patterns? Can you see how they serve you? Write them down. Actually look at them. That makes it more real. Don't worry about the next step. Just start there. I really thank you for being here with me today. I look forward to having more conversations with you about topics that I am experiencing, that I know we all are experiencing. And I look forward to the next time. So until then, grow strong, my friends. Stay rooted. I love you.